Good evening. I'm Karen Sanders, the London representative on the Trade Union Committee, and I'm going to be chairing the RCN Pay Rally this evening. I'd like to welcome you and thank you all for putting the time away to be at the event tonight, and also to apologise about the IT glitch that we've had. One of the problems with COVID-19 and the pandemic is we've all had to learn to use IT, and it doesn't always go well. So I'm sorry about the delay starting the event. Just to share, first of all, that tonight is not a question and answer session, but as members watching the event on Vimeo, you can comment live, and we'll try to bring some of your comment to the event tonight. So just to share with you, the speakers speaking tonight have been given up to 5 minutes to speak to you. The event is being recorded, and so it will be available to you and to other members after the event finishes. And of course, you can continue a conversation on social media using #FairPayForNursing. Now, many of you, I'm sure, will remember that last May and June, the RCN asked every member detailed questions about what they wanted to see as the future of nursing after the pandemic. And this included some detailed questions on pay. And we got a really good response to these questions, a record response rate. And what the Trade Union Committee did is it used this information to launch the campaign at the end of the summer, calling for the government to give nursing a 12.5% pay rise. Now, since then, we've had a series of events in September and October when we've got together with you to share what's happening with the campaign. And tonight is an opportunity for us to get back together so that we can tell you where we are at the start of 2021 and why it's so important that we win the battle this year. So tonight we have speakers who are going to offer you an update on where we are with the pay campaign, as well as members who are going to share some of their stories. Now, of course, it's really important that we hear the stories from one another, because each one of us has a story about why it's so important that we get fair pay. And it's also important, I think, that we don't forget that these stories are valuable, and that we don't use them to continue to put pressure on the government so that it values those of us providing nursing care and provides those of us that provide nursing care with a fair pay. So I'd like to open the event and ask the RCN President, Professor Dame Anne-Marie Rafferty, to open the event, please.
Thank you very much, Karen, and hello, everyone. Tonight is really about you and what we can all achieve together. And channeling the immortal words of Aretha Franklin that you heard earlier, we want to turn the respect that you've earned into the reward to which you're actually entitled. And we're throwing all the tools we have at our disposal to this venture. Today, we're promoting our evidence submission to the NHS Pay Review Body. We have data, we have stories, as Karen said. We have you, our greatest asset, to petition the Prime Minister and demand fair pay for nursing. We have modelling exercises and an argument that investing in nursing staff is not a drain on the economy, but brings benefits in tax revenues, employment, and local spending communities. And last Monday, we urged the Prime Minister to personally intervene and speed up the pay review body process. And we can show that we've got the public on side. In a poll, 86% of respondents backed some level of pay rise for us. And we're being inclusive and reaching out to our members working in the independent health and social care sector. And you're entitled to a significant pay rise that reflects the monumental effort that you're making, not only to nursing the nation during this most difficult of times, but on top of that, to help roll out a historic vaccine programme, the likes of which we've never seen. This is a huge national effort in which you're playing leading roles. And I'd like to say a massive thank you for your amazing work and epic efforts in supporting patients, loved ones, and all of us through the pandemic. I'm really in awe of you and so proud of the phenomenal contribution you're making. And we're working through the toughest stage of the pandemic, facing staff shortages, low morale, and an area which has been chronically deprived of investment and resources. And COVID has highlighted these areas more than ever. So tonight, as Karen mentioned, we're here the latest updates on our campaign from members across the UK and people from across the organisation. I hope you enjoy tonight's event and really join in the spirit of things. Please continue to support and share the campaign as much as possible. Members' experience of the pandemic reinforce why it's so important to support the campaign during this totemic time. Thank you. I'll now hand back to Karen.
Anne-Marie, thank you for your inspiring words. It's such a tough time at the moment, isn't it, for all of those people involved in providing nursing care. But I think what we really need to remember is that we have the strength of 450,000 members behind us. And we need to remember together, if we work together for our profession, for our colleagues and our patients, we will succeed because we deserve this pay rise. So thank you, Anne-Marie, for those inspiring words. I'd like to now welcome Dave Dawes, the Chair of RCN Council, to bring us his thoughts.
Thanks, Karen, and welcome everyone. I wanted to speak to you tonight as Chair of your Council about why pay is Council's top priority. Throughout the pandemic, the country's witnessed the most incredible demonstration of nursing, seeing it as a highly skilled profession deserving of fair pay. Without nurses, without the nursing family, we would not be where we are today. But the Fair Pay for Nursing campaign is about much more than just our response to COVID. The Fair Pay for Nursing campaign is about making sure that a safety critical profession can reach the safe staffing levels and fill tens of thousands of unfilled nursing jobs. It's about recognising the salaries of far too many nursing professionals just hasn't kept pace with inflation and with the cost of living. The RCN's been fighting for better pay since before I was born, and it's been fighting for better pay my entire life and my entire nursing career. In 1948, staff nurses were paid £1 for an 8-hour shift, not even £1 an hour, £1 for the entire shift. Every single pay rise that we've won since then has been hard fought for by the RCN, and every single pay rise we've had since then has been resisted by successive governments of every colour. This is my 8th year on council, having served in 4 different decades, the 90s, the 2000s, the teens and the 20s. And I can confirm as a council member and as chair of your council that pay and safe staffing are top of our agenda. I spent the 90s working in the NHS, and for the last 20 years I've worked in the independent sector. And I sometimes hear from independent sector members that this is just an NHS issue. That couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, this campaign is about a 12.5% pay lift across the NHS nursing family, but pay in the independent sector is absolutely linked to this figure. If you run a care home, if you run a private hospital and you want to recruit nurses, then you will be in competition with the NHS and you will have to pay competitive pay compared to the NHS. If NHS nurses win a 12.5% pay rise, this will clearly affect and impact pay rises in the independent sector. It always has done and it always will do. If pay rises in the NHS, it will rise in the independent sector. If pay stays flat in the NHS, it will stay flat in the independent sector. This campaign affects us all. And I always talk about pay and safe staffing together because for me, they're absolutely intrinsically linked. This is about being able to recruit people into the profession and about organisations being able to recruit the nurses they need to provide the care that patients and clients desperately need. Pay is not the only thing that attracts people into nursing, but if you don't pay people well enough, and if you don't pay people enough to basically live on and support their families, it's simple, they'll just go elsewhere. Today, we're launching our data and our research on pay. And our data and research shows nurses are really struggling. More and more nurses are getting into debt. More and more nurses are looking at better paid jobs with less stress, less trauma, and less pressure. Nursing is tough enough at the moment, even if we were paid properly and had the staff we need. Without decent pay and without safe staffing, it's just too much for many nurses to bear. We will only win this fight if more and more members get involved. We need you to be part of that change. It's a cliche, but it's true. The RCN is its members. Funding our health and care system is a political choice. Funding nursing is a political choice. After years of inadequate support for the largest healthcare workforce in the UK, the government has to make this right now. It's time to pay nurses fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. It's so important to us as members to know that Council is really committed to supporting its members at this time, getting the campaign out there and making it really clear to the government that enough is enough. We're not taking it anymore and that we deserve a pay rise, 12.5% pay rise. Thank you, Dave. I'd now like to welcome Mel Keir, RCN Council member for East Midlands, to share his thoughts and reflections. Mel, if you'd like to share with us, that would be lovely.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you for having me on the panel tonight to speak about my experience. So I'm the North Lincolnshire Branch Chair Rep, and I'm also a newly elected East Midlands Council member, but I've been working as a frontline nurse for the last 5 years and through this pandemic as well. And I think it's important to highlight the stark reality that pay and safe staffing levels have been a chronic issue within the NHS. And I've certainly seen these challenges in my short career. When I first qualified and I started working in A&E, all of the issues we face now were still issues then. And you would hear staff say, we don't get paid enough for this. This pandemic has only highlighted the devastating effects that lack of staff can have on a day-to-day running of services and to the high quality standard the patients demand and the management expect. The government claims to have created 13,000 more nurses, and is this not only inaccurate and misleading, but it also does not address the key issues around why there are 45 nursing vacancies alone in the NHS. We have to be able to effectively recruit and retain staff and focus on resolving these key issues first to then develop the workforce. The conditions of working in the NHS are incredibly difficult and challenging, particularly during this pandemic, but we don't encourage staff to either stay in the NHS or in healthcare at all with current levels. We need to have adequate funding and opportunities for career development for staff to allow them to reach their true potential. Staff are exhausted, and personally, never have I cried so much after shifts, and never have I felt like I am failing my patients so much. I struggle to sleep every night despite being so exhausted, and I cannot switch off from the events of the day. The skill mix of staff is often incredibly poor, and staff move and swap wards to ensure patients are as safe as is possible. But equally, we are then unable to offer support for our less experienced staff and the students and what they need. The key point is, if this trend continues and doesn't improve, patients will not be safe. I would wager that patients are not safe now, and staffing levels are not only directly affecting the safety of our patients, but also the well-being of our staff, adding to already high sickness levels as a result of the pandemic, which in turn puts even more pressure on an already broken system. One solution to the staffing crisis of the NHS and other sectors is to pay us what we deserve. As healthcare staff, we have seen a significant real-time pay cut over the last decade, and it's time we received true remuneration for this. We demand a truly reflective pay based on our knowledge, skill set, and responsibilities that we face daily, which has only increased. If this is not acted on now by this government, then the current failing system will completely falter and crumble. The healthcare unions and organising groups may have different asks, but ultimately we're all demanding the same thing and have the same goal: a significant and meaningful pay rise. As members, I ask for you to contact your local branches, ask how you can be involved and be aware of local and regional events that you can become involved in. Contact your MPs and implore them to get behind this pay campaign. Talk to your colleagues, spread the word. The only way to fight and win this campaign is to stand side by side and say enough is enough. Thank you.
Mel, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us so powerfully, and why the campaign is so important to you. I'd now like to invite Heather Massey, who is the student representative on the Trade Union Committee, to share with us her experiences of being a student through the pandemic and to discuss with us her involvement in the campaign as part of the TU Committee.
Thank you, Karen. So I'm Heather. I'm the student representative on the Trade Union Committee within the RCN, and I also sit on the Students Committee. And I am a newly qualified nurse. So my final placement was I opted in to the extended paid placement during the first wave of COVID on the ward that I am still working on. Now, this campaign is about far more than COVID, but it really does bring a very salient point to this discussion: the contribution of students to the functioning of our health service and how we are often used to fill these gaps in staffing. Now, fair pay for nursing doesn't just apply to our registered nurses, because if it's going across the NHS system, we want it across all the pay scales, because all of our staff and everyone we work with is a vital part of what we do. I could not do my job without the healthcare support workers, without the assistants, without the domestics, without the housekeepers. I couldn't physically do that. And as a student as well, I was trying to balance my part-time job, trying to balance my studies, trying to balance placement pre-COVID, and I was hitting burnout. I was exhausted, and I felt like I had nothing else to give. But because of financial pressures, I had to keep going. I had to really just try and find a way through, to keep pushing through. And it was exhausting. But over the course of the last year, so since the survey was released last year, and we got that feedback from our members that actually this meaningful, significant pay rise that nurses and nursing staff across the sector deserve, we need something that we can feel in our pockets, because we are burnt out, we are exhausted, we are drained, we are seriously lacking in morale and motivation, but we keep going. And it's about time we were appreciated for this and for this effort that we keep doing. As part of my role on the Students Committee, thanks to the lovely Jess last year, who we managed to open up a dialogue with the Minister Helen Whately, and we are now continuing to keep these discussions going, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep this very open dialogue to keep this flow going of how valuable our students are, because our students are the future of our profession. And if we can't engage students with the passion that we all started out with, then we're going to flounder. And we really need to show that we are all here and we all want to teach more, and we all want to bring people into such a rewarding job. I could not picture myself doing anything else. But one of the running jokes when I was at university was, why am I paying to be here when I could be stacking shelves at Aldi for better pay, for less stress? And you don't want people thinking that. We go to work because we love what we do, and we go to work because we just want to do this. We want to look after people. So we do deserve effective, significant rise to feel that difference in our pockets. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And I think it raises another really important point, doesn't it? Because not only are those people who are trained out there working beyond what we could even ask anyone to do with the present patient load, but there's also the desire for those clinical supervisors and clinical assessors and registered nurses to support the students that are out in clinical practice trying to learn. And of course, those students need to be supported. And I think one of the other things that we have to remember, and I'm sure we all do, but it's whether the government recognises it and whether society recognises it, is the students are working out there in the pandemic situation, and they're not being paid at all. They're getting absolutely nothing for what they're doing. So I think it's really important that we hear the voice of student nurses. And I think if there are any of you out there that are student nurses that are join the event tonight, we would really welcome hearing your stories, please. So I'd now like to welcome Jeremy Davis, a member and rep from Wales, to share his story and thoughts with us, please. Thank you, Jeremy.
Hello. As you just said, my name's Jeremy Davis. I'm a nurse and a rep that's been working for 34 years within the NHS. and I've been asked to provide something about my experiences of working during the pandemic. I work as a mental health nurse working with older adults. And my first experience of nursing pay was 2017, the Scrap the Cap campaign. And what I was faced with at the time, I was one of the people going around with postcards asking people to support it. And a lot of the time you'd hear people turning around and saying, well, you do a good job, you're very valued, but every now and again you get someone going, well, hang on a minute, you knew what you were getting into. You know what the job is, you know what it entails, you know it wasn't going to be well paid. Well, this last year put the lie to that statement. I work in a mental health assessment ward for people of the age of 65. We're Hudruff Ward, a multidisciplinary team of nurses, support workers, OTs, and we do mental health assessments and nursing. And we watched as the news about this virus started to emerge from other countries and then here, and then the extent of it started to magnify and to roll over. And we suddenly realized it was going to start affecting us as well. We rapidly became a triage ward. We became a ward that was dealing with the isolation and management of patients with mental health issues that were to be nursed in isolation until their results were clear, and also work as a mental health ward. So we were doing two jobs in one in incredibly stressful circumstances with a disease that no one knew anything about. And all of a sudden we became nurses with a new uniform. Masks, visors, aprons, gloves, PPE, and something that none of us had ever worked with before, the knowledge that if we got something wrong, we stood the chance of taking a virus home to our parents, to my partner, to my children. We put ourselves at risk every day of the year, and we're still doing it now. And we're continuing to do it in the face of, in 2017, when we were talking about it for Scrap the Cap, we knew that 10 years ago, our pay was worth 20% less than it already was. And we're now in a circumstance where our current government is turning around and saying that they can't really look at nurses being given a pay rise because it's difficult times. Now, if these are not the times when we need or deserve a pay rise, when are the times going to be? We are people working at the front line along with other key workers. We are the people who can't afford to take our families on holiday. We have to look every time we look to the bills. We have to look every time to see if we can afford to do something. All at the same time while we're trying to look after the population of a nation from the cradle to its grave. Now, that isn't quite what I'd set out intending to say, but what else can I say? I mean, Heather said it earlier. People ask us now, why do we do a job if they know that we can get better paid work in other areas? What we need now is the significant pay rise to reward the people that have been there all through the journey, for the youngsters like Heather, for myself who's been here for 34 years. We are entitled to a pay rise we deserve. We're entitled to more than just lip service and what would amount over time to another substantial pay cut. I think that's probably all I've got to say, sorry.
Jeremy, you've got nothing at all to be sorry for. Thank you very much indeed for your honesty. Thank you for your powerful story. And thank you for really saying what most people are feeling, what most people are experiencing at the moment. So thank you for that. Thank you for your eloquent words. And I'm now going to ask Hannah Reid from the RCN Employment Relations Department to give us an update on behalf of the Trade Union Committee on the pay campaign and our work with NHS staff side, including the recent submission to the pay review body and what that actually means as part of the pay process. So Hannah, we'd love to hear what you've got to say, please.
Thank you very much, Karen, for the opportunity to provide an update on NHS pay processes. As the Fair Pay for Nursing campaign has highlighted, any pay increases for NHS staff are ultimately decided by governments across the UK. Any pay rise is a political choice. Now, governments can choose different routes to decide pay increases. On occasions, they've agreed to direct negotiations with health trade unions, and the Scottish Government has signalled it plans to take this route this year. But more often than that, UK governments ask the NHS Pay Review Body to make recommendations to ministers on pay for NHS staff employed on Agenda for Change contracts. Now, there are 4 key stages to the pay review process. First, the government must issue a remit to the Pay Review Body, otherwise known as the PRB. Second, the PRB gathers and takes evidence to inform its decisions. Third, the PRB reports to the government, setting out its recommendations on pay. And finally, the government considers whether to accept the recommendations and decides on any pay increase for NHS staff. Now, I'll come back in a second to these stages, but for context, it may be important to recall that in November, during the spending review, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer signalled a return to pay restraint for public sector staff. Most public sector staff, excepting the lowest paid, could well experience a pay freeze in 2021-22, a situation which the RCN doesn't support. However, at the same time, the Chancellor confirmed that NHS staff, including doctors and nurses, would be exempted from the pay freeze and that the pay review bodies would be asked to give advice. So what will the PRB process mean in practice this year? Well, going back to stage 1, the remit, the Secretary of State for Health finally wrote to the NHS PRB on the 18th of December, asking them to advise on NHS pay for England. The formal remit letter underlined the need for the PRB to consider the difficult economic context and the affordability of any pay award for NHS staff. Similar remit letters have now also been issued by health ministers in Wales and Northern Ireland. Now moving to stage 2, before making recommendations, the PRB commissions research on pay and related matters, and it also visits workplaces to hear directly from employers and staff. And this year, the PRB has organised a number of virtual visits across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Wherever possible, the RCN has ensured that the voices of nursing staff are heard loud and clear at these events. The PRB also invites key stakeholders, NHS trade unions, NHS employers and providers and the government to provide written and oral evidence. And as you just mentioned, Chair, on the 18th of January, the RCN submitted our written PRB evidence, which was overseen and reviewed by your Trade Union Committee and Council. At the heart of this submission are the views of RCN members, expressed through our member survey in 2020. The submission also sets out a robust evidence-based case why nursing staff need a substantial 12.5% pay rise, a pay rise which recognises and fairly rewards the complex and safety critical care provided by nursing staff, as has been clearly demonstrated throughout the COVID pandemic, and a pay rise which attracts and retains nursing staff within the NHS. The RCN plans to publish our submission shortly after the government has submitted its own evidence to the PRB. Now, alongside our own evidence, the RCN has also been working with the NHS staff side to prepare a joint union submission, making the case for an early and significant pay rise for NHS staff. This joint submission sets out why substantial investment is needed in NHS pay. It's needed to equip the NHS to recover following the pandemic. It demonstrates that any pay rise is affordable, as demonstrated by the recent London Economics research, and it highlights how such pay rises will be supported by the public. Now, the PRB is now expecting to organise oral evidence sessions, and as a leading staff side trade union, the RCN expects to play a full role in these sessions. Now, moving on to stage 3 very quickly. After considering all the evidence, the PRB will make recommendations to the government. And ministers have indicated that they expect the PRB to report by May 2021. Government ministers will then consider the PRB advice and decide on any pay rise for NHS staff and how it is to be funded. Now, the RCN and other health unions have expressed concern about this proposed timeline, asking for it to be speeded up, because in our opinion, NHS staff should not have to wait for a fair and substantial pay rise. Thank you.
Mute switch isn't working. Thank you very much indeed, Hannah, for that very clear explanation about where we are and what we're doing. This is a really very complex process, isn't it? And of course, because of that, it's difficult for many of us to get our heads around it. So I'm sure if there's anybody out there that is still having some problems understanding the process, if you contact your local trade union committee member, or if you contact your local regional country board, they'll be able to give you some more explanation as to the process. But it is quite a complex process. So thank you for that, Hannah. I'd now like to invite one of our members from Scotland, Jennifer Fox, to tell us why the campaign is so important to her. So Jen, we look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I just want to start by saying it's an absolute privilege to be speaking with you all tonight. This is my first time speaking in public, and I don't know how many years, so I'm very nervous. Please forgive me if my voice shakes or I make mistakes. But the importance of this rally for me on a personal level and to reach out to all you have joined tonight outweighs my nerves 100%. I started my nursing career in 2010, doing 3 years training at university, and I've now been qualified for 7 years as a mental health nurse in Scotland. When I first started training, I was a single mum with a 2-year-old child. I worked part-time throughout my training, and when on practical placement, worked 5 days a week on the wards and then 2 days a week, sometimes 12-hour shifts to support my daughter. It was difficult, it was exhausting, and at times it was heartbreaking having to leave her. She would cry and say she'd never seen me and I was always working, but there was always a promise that I was doing all this working and training and computer writing so that we could have a better life. As a student and a newly qualified nurse, I took pride in telling people my profession. I'm a nurse, I would say, as if it was the most important job in the world, and to me it still is. But, and it's a massive but, the year I started my nursing training was a pivotal year. It was the year that the austerity became the main political agenda for the UK government. And since then, for the 10 years that have followed, I have seen the nursing profession become undervalued, under-resourced and underpaid. Not all of us have the same story, but we all have common ground. And that is, our cost of living has increased, our workloads have increased, and our wages have not kept up with either. I have often heard from nurses, nursing support workers, and other people not even connected with healthcare. Oh, you don't become a nurse for the money, and I agree. It takes a special breed of person to become a nurse. Sorry, I'm so nervous.
Jen, you're fine. Don't worry.
It takes a special breed of person to become a nurse. We are known to be a modest profession and to underestimate our value, but we are a special breed. We care for others as if they're our own. We skip breaks and go 8 hours without going to the toilet. We phone home and say, I'll be a little later tonight on a regular basis because we care. We take pride in our duty. We strive to give our best. We cry and we laugh with patients. We are there when no one else can be. I love being a nurse. I love doing my job, but it comes at a personal cost to my private life. When I was returning to work with my middle child due to financial reasons, I stopped breastfeeding when he was 6 months old. and return to work full time. When I work shifts, when I'm on a late shift and an early shift, I don't see my kids for over 24 hours. A couple of times when I was a newly qualified nurse, I had to take a 110-mile round trip to Stirling to drop my daughter off at a relative's house because I couldn't afford private childcare. I know now to plan and save for months that I have to pay my NMC fees, when school clothes need bought, when there's a 5-week month at nursery. I do this, and we all make sacrifices for what is a purely political decision. The government don't think we deserve to be paid a wage that allows us to live and acknowledges our contributions. The campaign for fair pay is important to me. It's important to me personally, and it's important to me because I believe that my colleagues UK-wide deserve to be acknowledged and appreciated for the work that they do. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the forefront the important role we have in society. You as a nurse and nursing support workers are literally putting your lives on the line for our country to protect them and to care for them. The COVID-19 pandemic has also brought to the forefront the financial insecurity of a lot of nurses. Whilst many, including MPs, have been given substantial amounts of money for running offices from home and staff from home, I'm sitting here talking on my daughter's laptop because I can't afford my own. I know that sometimes we receive emails and social media posts from the union urging us to speak for our campaign and for our profession, and it's an absolute thought to go there. We're busy, we've got other things on our mind, we need some downtime, but now is our time. It's our time to stand up for ourselves, and it's our time to stand up for each other because nobody else will. It's time to let the government know that clapping was just not enough. For our NHS and care services to succeed, our staff need to be healthy. We need to have proper staffing levels, and we need our staff to be paid a decent and fair wage. The nursing profession can't go much longer at a breaking point like this, so it's time for us to take a stand. Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Jen, you have nothing to be sorry for. Thank you very much for the courage of sharing such a powerful message, such a powerful experience, and we're really grateful for you sharing that tonight to us. And I think it's what I said at the very beginning, these stories are so important. It's so important that society, the public and the government understand actually what it's like at the moment to be a nurse. And I think your story is very powerful, as is the stories of many of the people that are with us tonight. But Jen, thank you for the courage of being here tonight with us and sharing that with us. It's a really valuable contribution. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Jessica Sainsbury, who is a newly qualified nurse in England, to share her story and her experiences.
Thanks, Karen. And cool, what an act to follow, Jen. Oh my goodness, you nearly had me choked up there. Hi, everyone. My name's Jess Sainsbury. I'm a newly registered adult and mental health nurse working in the southeast of England. I'm currently co-lead of a fab newly qualified nurse network, used to be involved with the students committee. So with that in mind, I wanted to focus on the realities of poor pay and funding for our students and new registrants. But a bit about my journey into nursing first. I was a mature student. I left a career in human resources in order to retrain and become a nurse. Like many, I've got a mortgage and bills to pay, along with a young family to support. I have had the support of my husband to pursue this change of plans. The wage I earned in my last full-time role within HR was more than what I earn in my role as a Band 5 nurse. That role wasn't a graduate role. I've got no previous degree, and that pay was awarded to me in 2014. How have I got a first-class honours degree and stepped into a role that is being remunerated considerably less than a non-graduate position in 2014? Many newly registered nurses don't make it past their first couple of years in post. We struggle to retain our new registrants, but why? Many decide that nursing is simply not for them. Many are unable to afford to feed themselves and their families, and get jobs elsewhere, paying more money than what they were earning in a community-based nursing role, for example. My clinical role is community-based, and we are seeing more and more newly registered nurses starting off in the community, which is fab. But without the enhancements of shift work, this area of nursing is not accessible to all. Some simply cannot afford to go into the community as they are reliant on those enhancements. Others are considering leaving community so that they can work on the wards and receive more pay due to the pressures of family circumstances. One newly qualified nurse I know has had a change in circumstances. Her elderly father-in-law had to move into the family home due to his ill health, and her husband, now his main carer. This has meant that her husband's had to give up his work and wage. Her wage is therefore supporting a family with 4 children, and they are classed as living in poverty. Worrying about having to work extra hours in order to make ends meet and clothe their families is not something that should be happening, but it is. Is that valuing our profession? We need to demand for better pay for our graduates. We need to demand for better pay for our profession. We need to go right back to the beginning and demand for better for our nursing students. We need to do this not only for the future of our profession, but the future of the patients we care for as well. For a moment, I'd like to acknowledge the struggles our future workforce has before they even reach the nursing register, to add to the fantastic insights of our lovely student member of Trade Union Committee, Heather. I've seen my peers struggle financially to the point of exhaustion because they are simply working too many hours to make ends meet, or have had no choice but to step off the course. I've seen students in tears because they've had to decide between putting fuel in their car in order to get to a practice placement, which is miles away, or getting food for the week ahead. They chose the fuel and hoped that the practice area would take pity on them or have some shared snacks available. Sometimes they'd visit food banks. I've been informed that students local to me have had to hire camping pitches, yes, camping pitches, to stay on because they can't afford the initial outlay of 2 rental properties. They were sent into practice placement area too far to be able to commute from their original accommodation. And while they're able to claim back the additional rent, they still have to pay out initially. They couldn't afford to do this, so they camped instead. Imagine working a 14-hour shift for free and then have to sleep in a tent before getting up the next morning and then doing it all over again. I've also seen students attend a full day of lectures straight after coming off a night shift because that was the only way they could fit in paid shifts in order to afford to live, but they didn't want to skip lectures and miss vital learning. These are just a few examples of the financial struggles of nursing students who are simply trying to get through their courses and become registered nurses. If they were properly funded and supported, this would not be a common occurrence. You go through all of that as a student and then you've joined the register. And usually when you start your first nursing post, you commence a preceptorship programme, which is designed to give you the best start possible to your nursing career. Due to the ongoing pandemic, we are hearing of preceptorship programmes being postponed or even cancelled. New registrants are expected to muck in now that they've got their PIN. And of course we want to help, but we all know that getting it right at the start with simple and easy to implement interventions to help our brand new nurses, such as a robust induction, a preceptorship programme, regular clinical supervision, and a peer support network is vital. A lot of our new registrants either started their first post just before COVID hit our shores or completed their courses in the middle of the first wave. A lot of us are struggling. A lot of us have already had time off due to the impact of nursing in a global pandemic with severe staffing shortages and the effect this has had on our mental health. We're not alone in this. This is bigger than us here on our tiny island. This is about our profession being taken seriously on a global scale. We deserve better than this. We deserve fair pay for nursing. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you very much again for another very, very powerful set of thoughts and reflections and your story. As a university lecturer, I stand by and watch students going through all the things that you've just talked about, and as you say, it just isn't fair. It's not right. And if we're going to fill the staffing shortage gaps that we had even before the pandemic, we're not going to do that if we continue to treat students the way we are. And also, as I said said earlier, it's also about recognising that we have registered nurses and experienced other healthcare professionals who are expected, as you say, to provide preceptorship, mentorship, support and offer learning. But thank you so much, Jessica, for your honesty and for sharing your story with us, because as I've already said, it's so important that the public and particularly the government understand just what it's like to be a nurse or in nursing or a student nurse. So thank you for your honesty and thank you for your truthfulness. Thank you. So I'd like to now invite the final speaker of the evening, someone we all know so well, Dame Donna Kinnair, the RCN Chief Executive and General Secretary, to close tonight's events with her thoughts and her update. So Donna, we look forward to hearing what you've got to share with us, because I know you've had a very busy day on and off with the press, but so thank you for being with us as well so late in the evening. Donna.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, everyone, and really thank you for that introduction, Karen. I just want to take a moment before I start to talk about pay, and I'll be very brief, I promise. But I just wanted to recognise that today we had the outcome that a staggering 883 health and care workers have died of COVID-19 since March. So that's 883. And I guess I'd just like to take a moment to think about our colleagues and just honour them. So thank you again for our members watching live tonight and for taking time out of your busy lives to join the Fair Pay for Nursing campaign. And thank you to our speakers this evening, Mel, Jeremy, Jennifer, Heather, Jessica, who all shared their personal stories about their working lives and why nurses must be valued and not just nursing, so our healthcare support workers as well, should be valued through fair pay. I think the words have moved us all, and the staggering number that I just gave you means that we have to collectively have the courage to speak up for fair pay. You have heard how Council and the trade union and all of the RCN staff are working really hard on behalf of our members. You deserve a fair pay rise and you deserve it now. No one is working harder through this pandemic and nobody should have to wait for that pay rise. Today and tonight, we've been talking about our work in the NHS, but in all health and care settings, all nursing staff and healthcare staff should be awarded improved pay terms and conditions. And I just want to leave you with our ambition really, that as staff and as your council and as your trade union committee, we will continue to work together to empower and represent our members, both working in the independent health and social care sector and the NHS through our strategy. And as your Chief Exec and General Secretary, I am truly committed for fighting as hard as we can together and being transparent with our members about everything we're doing. I truly believe that giving you all of the information allows members to make the best decisions for our college. So it's vital that we make ourselves, all of us, make ourselves heard in the coming months. Please continue to campaign for the Fair Pay for Nursing, and don't forget, sign the petition, share our campaign information to your friends and followers on social media, sign up as a campaign supporter, and take our regular easy online actions that can help you do this. And you can do this on our website as well. So I just want to finish by saying thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for your hard work in supporting the campaign and everything you're doing for every single patient day in and day out. So thank you all.
Donna, thank you for sharing those words with us.